Today we're talking about what is blockchain. My assumption is I could spend a lot of time talking about what is blockchain to somebody that doesn't know, but we're well into the second day here. I'm thinking that probably somebody doesn't know what blockchain is. They've already left. So, and so in discussing what to do on this, I said that really what's important for our audiences here, find out where they are and take care of them, which is a overall mission I have in life. Is when I can explain something in simple terms, I do. Let's start with my explanation of blockchain. Cool. I just say you take any old database, spreadsheet, or whatever it is, and put the parts together. Take 10 rows and encrypt them and add them to the next 10 rows. You got a chain of blocks. It's as simple as that. Yeah, it's usually distributed, and some of the encryption gets a little bit more complicated than that. And but the great advantage is that this allows for the decentralization instead of having a central control. So if you don't get that, ask. Let's delve into it and talk about a few ways that blockchain can be used outside of I'm a little bit lost. Jeremy, are you on here? Can you tell me if there's any questions that are coming in, because I wanted to have a lot of question and answer in this.
Got it. Yeah, I think maybe Christina was going to join in and kind of run that. Christina, can you join back?
I can easily talk the whole time. That's not the problem. But I always like to be reaching the audience, and I help having another voice on there really does that. Besides, I don't see if there's any question.
So, sure. Well, I mean,
Christina, you're at the controls.
I love it. I didn't realize that we were going to do this, but you know what I would like to talk about is let's assume that the audience is rather well educated and that we can go as fast as we want about the future of where we can go with blockchain, specifically with AI and blockchain. I would like to, there's a bunch of things to delve in there, including smart cities and all kinds of bleeding edge technology.
Great.
Can you talk a bit about that? And seriously, if you want to just take about 10 minutes to talk about the future and the road to mass adoption, that would be amazing.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's something that I know we tried to cover that yesterday, and the panel got very much hung up on crypto and getting people to use crypto. I'd like to get outside of crypto and just say the advantage of having the blockchain on everything. I was very bullish about getting blockchain everywhere. And then I read a book, the latest book by George Gilder. It's Life After Google. It's probably about 2 years old now. And when I read that and I realized that he's been right about several things before, and it's not technically a question of whether or not every single database will be changed to blockchain, but count on that during this decade, anything that's data, that means, maybe not the spreadsheets, but anything that's a database that's keeping a record, all the transactions are going to get switched to some kind of blockchain encrypted transaction. I talked to a few tech experts on building this stuff, and they'll tell me, well, maybe maybe it isn't good in some places. It's not cost effective to record everything like that. But to me, it's the distributed nature of this that works out. So every time I see anything that's centralized, and let's start with Google. Google, even though they have data centers around the world and scrape the entire web to serve us up to advertisers, they're a centralized location. Facebook is centralized. There's one thing in control. Governments are centralized. All of our institutions tend to be centralized. And in the 20th century, we spent a whole lot of time building up those institutions, making them great. And when we talk about corporate America, we're talking about, Fortune 100, 1,000, 5,000, whatever the top companies are, and ignoring that, most of the new jobs and innovation come from rest of business. And talk about decentralized. You open up a shop and start doing what you're doing. You're serving just your local community and what they want, and then interconnecting it with global. So when I ran a brick and mortar business, the phrase "think global, act local" came up all the time, and I like that. I'm not really sure what whoever was pushing that what they wanted anymore. And it's the popularity of the phrase is gone. But that's it. Everything we do can be connected to anybody on Earth, but we have to take care of whatever our community is, and that's no longer geographical. It can be anywhere on Earth. So start applying that to everything that can happen. And Christina mentioned smart cities, and that's now we find out that a city can innovate and try to do things. Read the news. Government doesn't do a really good job of dictating how to control a virus or take care of unemployment and things like that. It's got to be on a lot smaller scale. And the innovation, I've been following this trend for about 20 years now. The innovation that comes from cities where there's a mayor in charge and can take some action is far faster than trying to say, can we reform healthcare at a national level? And certainly the global things get very difficult because we got warring factions. And I don't mean warring countries. I mean people who think we ought to have countries, and other people who say, well, there's no limits. And I tend to be the latter. I want to call myself a globalist, but the future is definitely going that way. And these are not like attitudes or policies or things that I like. These are just like trends I'm watching. Frankly, I don't care who wins in a political contest or whether or not the social mores change. I want to find out what they are, and I want to predict them, and I want to make money off of them. And I think we can in any situation. If suddenly we all went under a totalitarian government, we'd have to figure out what to do. So start watching the things the smart cities are doing, and Google smart cities, and it's unbelievable. YouTube on smart cities, conferences, lots of smart people talking about this. And very seldom are they talking about, the hindrance of we need to everybody get along. It's sharing best practices. In a company, departments start having best practices and sharing it. In the global village, it's cities. And so we start adding in AI and first of all, blockchain. It's got to make sure I set the foundation. Blockchain means you start recording every transaction. You no longer need to worry about auditing because auditing is done as soon as you record the transaction. One of the principal things about blockchains in a what is blockchain discussion is what happens when something gets recorded in 1,000 different places. And this is what makes it so secure for cryptocurrency. It's 1,000 or 10,000 different databases. You need to go back, and if you're going to change something, you have to change it on all of them. In a spreadsheet, you can pull it up and change a cell, and that changes all the other cells, and everybody goes, okay, fine. In accounting, you can go double entry accounting. You can go and make adjusting entries and things like that. But with blockchain, once the transaction is recorded, there's no changing it. You can make an adjustment. You can keep track of records like that, but you can't change it. So let's look at the supply chain example. One of my favorite comes if you're ordering something that comes from Frankfurt, Germany. They've sourced the materials to build a finished product, and now you ordered it. How are they going to get it? And I'll use Las Vegas since that's where I'm sitting. How am I going to get that item? Quite often, bulk of that kind of material moves by a truck to a port. It could be an airport, but usually still there's a lot of shipping. There's a big ship. A lot of it lands in New York, gets on another train, and comes to a distribution center where in my metro area, and a truck brings it to my house. In the old days, that meant that every time it was changed, somebody had to sign over to say that they'd taken receipt of it, and there could be accounts could be off, and accounts could be off by human error, entering a 4 instead of a 9. or just the paperwork, reading it was a big hassle. Carbon copies of, going through, maybe some people here don't know what a carbon copy is, but multiple copies of a document. And then even when they're entered into a computer, human error on that. Is the count off on something? And where did it go wrong? Blockchain eliminates that entirely. It's, it's a solid number that's entered in the beginning. Doesn't keep somebody from committing fraud. You can say there's 29 items on the pallet, and then in the middle of it, you rearrange things so there's only 14. You just see the ones on the outside, and or just lie about it, and that'll travel along. But the change, each time there's a change recorded, somebody certifying that they've counted and take care of it. So you make a rule that's part of the smart contract, and that's how things work. It's the same thing that gives us the ability to, I can pay you $1 and you get the dollar, and it's gone from me without us being in the same room. And the beauty of the digital transaction, we get into that kind of accounting, and everything is just solid. There's no reason to ever have to audit it or worry about it or correct it. There's a public record of what happened. Okay, so you combine that with AI, and you've got data. Once that database gets tied into a machine learning algorithm, it's going to plow through and give us insights that we didn't think were there, and that includes IoT, which is where I really like that I were rambling about smart cities for a while. That every stoplight changing could be recorded in a database. Actually every light bulb in a traffic light being tested for its life or whatever could be recorded. Everything gets documented, recorded, and you can't go back and change it. Embezzlement and a lot of other malfeasance in the world happens because people can ignore or change records, and so that's it.
Warren, I have a quick follow-up question for you.
Okay.
If you could take all of the things that this community represents, if we were to get our way and we were able to leapfrog in 10 years and we got all the legislation put together and the world now runs on blockchain and AI, let's pretend that the path is just completely steamrolled and we get everything we possibly want. Can you explain the level of Jetsons type world that we would live in if all of that would happen?
Well, I think, first of all, impossible that that's ever going to happen. It's going to be piecemeal. Right now, we have more, we have way more technology than we use. I like to put things down on the real local level and say, what happens when I go and pick up my dry cleaning? First of all, why am I picking up my dry cleaning? Well, I don't. This is dressy for me. But if you need to get dry cleaning, to just use the metaphor, I got to get in my car, drive to the place, drop the stuff off, remember where it is and where the ticket was, and then go back and get it. And then all the processes there, did they really have it done? And just the delivery of it is such a mess. One of my favorite examples, trying to figure this out. What happens when I need a special deal with how I'm handling my dry cleaning? I've got to catch a plane and I want my favorite suit, and it's 10 minutes till they close and I'm 15 minutes away. Who takes care of that? Because all the human effort at giving really good customer service. I've done this. I have arrived right at the closing time at a dry cleaner and had somebody lock the door and laugh at me. They're my former dry cleaner. For many reasons, and there's so much more we can do. An ideal dry cleaner would be, first of all, you don't think about it. Somehow it's magically taken care of and in your closet. And so if you can't get it in the closet, at least you can get it at your front door. And I've seen so much adaptation happen in living in the world of Amazon now that I live in, that I don't go out of the house, everything arrives on my doorstep. First time I ordered food that way, I thought, well, can I really trust that it's left on a sack on my front porch? And I got to tell you, 20 years ago, I wouldn't. I don't think it can be automated. There's very little things that computers can't do, but the artificial intelligence can't, love you. It can feign that, but it can't create a human experience. And so I think the future, really more than, will I get in a flying car or not? The future is all about, will I be able to spend time helping the people in my family, friends, and the people I serve in business? And I think so. I think, a doctor who has an AI diagnosing the patient, or at least helping diagnose, and laser robots doing the surgery, that, are much more precise than a human can be, still has to worry about things like the bedside manner stuff. There's one study that shows that a doctor touching a patient, which, let's get away from the Me Too stuff and I'm talking about positive, reinforcing touching the patients, taking their temperature, listening with the stethoscope, whatever, that they do, or just putting their hand on the elbow and saying it's all going to be all right. The recovery rate and healing, I'm not really sure what statistic they were measuring, but 30% is the number I remember. People get better faster, and more complete. You lose less patients who just give up and die. Other complications go down just because the doctor took the time to go with the patient. Well, that's not the typical surgeon. I think of the TV image, because that's where I've seen the most surgeons, is the guy thinks he's cutting meat and doesn't want to talk to patients. That's going to change. All those kind of things are going to change. So imagine a world of the future where you are able to be in touch with real people and have conversations. And even if it's conversations like this, where we can't all be in the same room, we'll be able to interact with the humans, knowing that the technology is taking care of everything else. What a wonderful example of where we're sitting. It's not long ago, we wouldn't dream of getting on a call like this and having it actually work. We could have a conversation. And I know I do several Zoom calls a day, and most of the time I forget that whether or not I talk to the person on the phone on Zoom or whatever. I had a long phone conversation yesterday, and it felt so weird because I couldn't get the guy to turn on his camera. Don't need to look at the guy, but it's so much more real to see people's faces. So that's the kind of future that I'm looking for. Do we have other questions?
I was just going to say that. Speaking of seeing people's faces and knowing the next few panels that are coming up, I really would love to see some folks jump online and show and participate. Gary, especially, like, we haven't heard much from you. You've been behind the scenes. Steph, you've been behind the scenes. Big shout out to Carl and Michael, who's manning the green room. Most of you guys met him and got to chat with him. So big shout out to Team Genius. So if you guys would like to participate, Warren is one of the OGs, man. Like, he's tell us a little bit about your work with Bit Angels and that side of the house.
I'd love to. Yes, because if they don't want to know anything about what it is Warren, how many times did you mention Bit Angels? I work with Michael Turpin, putting on conferences. He started Bit Angels with a man named David Johnson back in 2013. They were looking ways to invest in things around Bitcoin. There were no ICOs, there were no altcoins, and they started a group of investors that met on Google groups, private Google group, and there was a few hundred of them. One of the early things they did was invest in Ethereum. They saw a presentation from a young guy with a new idea who said, this is where we're going to fix what's wrong with cryptocurrency, and he came out with Ethereum. That's Vitalik. And and it's really cool. They've been doing it for that long. In 2014, they decided they wanted to get together, and Michael Turpin, being the kind of impresario that he is, came up with the idea that they'd all meet next to I think it was Money 2020 conference and have an extra day and see some pitches. And so that became this. Now I think 12 or 13 coin agendas have happened. Last year, we revived Bit Angels and started to open up city chapters around the world. And that's had a little bit of problem in 2020, where those meetings are all being held virtually. In fact, I was scheduled to speak at one in Los Angeles oh gosh, I believe our lockdown happened about the same day, but they had canceled it a week before. And so, it's like, okay, great. We finally got this going. I've got a company to pitch, and it all fell apart. But the resilience I see of people very interested in things, and able to get together wherever they can is just fantastic. So in the future, I think this kind of network is important. I just was approached by somebody today that was pitching their network as, there's no reason to go out and have to spend a lot of time and money researching what to invest in. There's groups of investors that network together. I don't know, I can't say much for the concept beyond that, but that's what Bit Angels has always been, and is going to become even more. You can become a member, some paltry fee to become a member. Once you are there, you're able to see these presentations, and they're all videoed, even when they're local and, not, you can't be there live. But it's great to be able to hang out with local people. There's quite a community in New York City, which I believe was our first one, that or San Francisco, where there's, a lot of people who know each other and network through the actual meetings. Los Angeles has been up and down. Right now, it's got a very strong leadership. And we are, we did one in Belgium last week, and Singapore coming up, and Toronto, and Miami, Columbus, Ohio.
You guys are all over the place. Let's do a shout out for the LA chapter. I'd like to give a shout out to Bill Inman and Michael Turpin and Warren and oh my gosh, is it Emily? Nope. Erica. Erica is the best.
Yeah, she was the one that was asking me earlier today is how many times I mentioned Bit Angels.
Well, you know what? Let's mention Bit Angels just a few more times, because it's bigger than Bit Angels, and Bit Angels is global, and Bit Angels is definitely part of the Genius Investor Network, and we are starting to connect that fabric digitally and make it easier for investors to understand these projects and what is blockchain.
Right.
And we're also,
and we had you speak at the LA.
I was there, yeah, and I made some great connections there. That's actually how I met Jean Kudar from Artiste Pro, and still a big fan of their project. They're going to be on the next one. I think for the next one, I'd love to have Bill Inman and Dr. Ben Gertzel from Singularity Net potentially do like a roundtable with the Genius Network, because I think a lot.
That's Well, if you can get, if you got a chance to see Ben Gertzel, you definitely should. He's the Singularity Net is singularitynet.io, where Bill's now the CEO. But Ben is the Dr. Ben. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to call him by his first name. Dr. Gertzel is the one of the guys that did the Sophia robot. That's owned by Singularity.org. But they've got just an outstanding. If you're looking for AI to hook up to your enterprise without having to go out and reinvent machine learning for your own data, that's the place to go find that. That's a network marketplace right by itself.
Yeah, I think we'll invite Danielle Monteleone, who also worked on the Sophia project, and bring that together. I think we'll have a little AI panel and just see who from the Genius Network wants to show up for that. AI is just so exciting, and so much more than, thank you very much. You're the first time I've been talking to somebody that didn't ask, well, is the robots going to take over? Who cares? Well, they might have rights one day, but that's a completely other thing.
But when the robots get ready to take over, we don't need to discuss it. We don't need to plan for it.
Here's the thing. I want to at least have drones. Here's the thing. Like I don't want Skynet, but I do want a drone to show up with my pizza. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's certain things that we should work towards. I think in smart cities and having traffic coordination, because you can't build the roads fast enough to feel like the level of infrastructure that needs to exist like overnight.
Yeah.
Is massive. Really, like, there's a lot to deal with.
What really got me was when Uber and Lyft were fighting for control of Las Vegas, they had some problems, shut down and opened up again. And so 2017 was the year. I happened to blow up the engine in my very old car and decided that I didn't want to drive anymore. And we are going to go to automated cars soon. So let me try all that. Next thing I know, I'm getting rides anywhere in the valley for $3. It was a wonderful time. And I got used to going around in the back seat like I had a limo driver. You know, and I'm sitting there watching the traffic and watch what's going on and how much less of a hassle it is for me. And we get to a busy intersection and have to stop. And I realized the math involved, which I couldn't do, but the math involved that somebody like Dr. Gertzel could do, to be able to have those cars communicate with each other. And let's say the speed limit's 40 and have some of the cars slow down to 38 and another one go 42. And we'd all go through the intersection without stop. You know,
that sounds so efficient.
Yeah.
What a concept.
I've started applying that to just everything that happens.
Right.
And of course, we haven't talked about my real favorite future technology is nanotechnology. We'll have to do that on a different day.
Thing on nano for sure.
Yeah, we're talking about buildings being built without, you know, just because you had the idea of building the building, you tell your AI and you've got a, you know, 40-story tower up.
So here's the trouble with that, Warren. So I grew up reading Michael Crichton, and so like I definitely like I'm aware how far we could go with science.
Yeah.
So we have to wrap up here. What are your I'd like to get kind of your final thoughts.
We will go that far because the technology is now on its own. There are bad people that are going to use AI to attack us. And they're building things in the dark web on blockchain, and you know they have other plans to either rob us or control us or whatever. So if we don't pursue technology as fast as we can to keep up with it, and you know and invent the bot that goes out to kill the other bots, or at least moderate. I prefer to use peaceful terms. We have to pursue it. The good people have to pursue technology as fast as they can, or we will be overtaken by the bad people who pursue technology.
I love
it. Simple as that.
Way to put it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Warren. I really appreciate
Jeremy's
it.
back. I'm getting the boot.
Yeah. Well, really appreciate it. I know you partook in yesterday's part of the conference on the panels as well. So thank you for your participation. Love hearing from you, and glad you're a part of the Genius Network officially.
Great.